Hi, ladies. It is Wellness Wednesday again today. And today we're talking about plant-based versus animal-based. And I'm your host, Jackie Grant. As usual, if you don't already know me, I help women who are menopausal to balance their hormones and habits without giving up the things they love. So welcome to Meghna, who is going to be joining us today, who is a registered holistic. I'll let her explain who she is. Meghna, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Jackie. So, hi, everybody. I'm Meghna, and I am a registered holistic nutritionist in Ontario, Canada. And I focus on a whole foods plant based diet, especially for diseases like type 2 diabetes. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today.
So, Meghna, tell us why you got into being a holistic nutritionist.
So I did struggle with a few issues earlier on about my digestion and my husband at a young age. Well, we didn't particularly have a very healthy diet earlier, and
Yeah.
so he had a non-alcoholic fatty liver and a lot of other stuff even before he was 30 years old. So all of this got me really interested in trying to improve our health because I knew this is not the way I want to go ahead
Mm.
with my husband, with my own health. And that's when I researched a lot and changed my field into studying nutrition. And I love it. I really, really love it. And especially ever since I've discovered a whole foods plant-based style of eating, um, this is right like the ultimate for me and my family. It's amazing, and I cannot stop talking about it because I feel like more people should know about this.
That's brilliant, Meghna. So,
Yeah.
so you and your husband didn't have a very great diet, and then you
Mm.
completely changed to plant-based.
Not initially. So initially,
Right.
we did the usual stuff. We eliminated the refined and junk foods as much as possible while still eating animal products,
Yeah.
and that we also saw a lot of improvement just by cutting out refined foods. So we weren't
Mm,
specifically following any particular diet at the time. We were
yeah.
just as much as possible avoiding the refined and the junk food, and
Mm,
we saw great results from that as well. But down
mm,
the line and gradually, my what really turned me into plant-based nutrition was when I was diving deep into how to improve my mother-in-law's type 2 diabetes. And she was doing everything by the book, what the doctor said. And she was
mm.
also, uh, following the guidelines, what the guidelines say about a typical diet for type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
And she was doing everything. And yet the doctor continued to talk about increasing her dose because it still wasn't working. And that's when
Right.
I started really, really diving deep into a plant based style of eating because she was asking, should I follow a low carb or a ketogenic approach? And I told her, no, not yet. Let me just research more
Mm,
about it. And then I
mm,
read a lot more about it. And then I figured out of the two, whole foods plant based diet is far safer, even though it would take a little bit longer. A whole
mm,
foods plant-based diet actually works behind the scenes first to clean out insulin resistance. And
mm.
it's not just a band-aid solution, which unfortunately a low carbohydrate diet is more like on the surface,
Mm.
on the surface, it looks like a low carbohydrate diet is actually improving type 2 diabetes because it avoids all kind of carbohydrates, even the healthy ones,
Mm.
but the
Exactly.
problem with a low carbohydrate diet is the huge emphasis on high fat and high protein, and that is not good for the organs, even
Mm.
though, on the surface, it looks like the biomarkers are improving. So blood sugar goes down and stuff like that. And that's all people are looking for because they're not really looking inside what happens. And
Mm.
unfortunately, the biomarkers only measure blood sugar levels, it only measures A1C, which is
Mm.
again an indicator of blood sugar. But
Yeah.
the thing is, because they are avoiding all carbohydrates, it appears that their diabetes is improving. But
Yes.
the real test of diabetes comes from actually not avoiding all carbohydrates. But even if somebody were to eat carbohydrates, how much of a spike in blood sugar would that be? That is the
Mm,
real test of
mm,
actually improving type 2 diabetes, which happens with a whole foods plant based diet, because that actually targets the root cause of insulin, of type 2 diabetes, which is insulin resistance.
resistance.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
definitely.
another thing about low carbohydrate diet, unfortunately, is people are avoiding all kinds of healthy carbohydrates, which are known typically, which research has proved is actually good for type 2 diabetes. So
Mm,
it never sat well with me. Why should people have to avoid healthy carbohydrates as well? So
yeah.
if you ask someone, anyone, whether they're diabetic or not, if you ask them, what do you think causes type 2 diabetes? Nobody will ever say fruits. I ate too many fruits. That's why I got type 2 diabetes. Nobody will ever say, I was eating oatmeal. That's why I got
Yeah.
type 2 diabetes, or quinoa, or chickpeas, right? These are not foods that would ever lead to type 2 diabetes. And yet, a low carbohydrate diet will ask you to even avoid these foods as well.
Mm,
So it never sat well with me. So, a whole foods plant based diet, on the other hand, will ask you to eat these foods because they are proven to improve insulin resistance from the inside out. It's like cleaning out insulin resistance from the inside out so that the body is better able to handle carbohydrates. So that is the main difference. Yeah.
great, great. So,
Yep.
in terms of whole whole food plant based, are you saying that it's a vegan diet or is it a vegetarian? What are you? What
So
is
it has
best for you?
similarities with a vegan diet. The main difference is a vegan diet is all about ethics, the ethics of not eating animal foods, the ethics of not exploiting animals for food. That's
Mm,
what veganism is. But a whole foods plant based diet is not about the ethics here, it's solely about health. So somebody who's not a vegan, who does not intend to be vegan long term, can still follow a whole foods plant based diet, and that actually makes it easier for a lot of people to follow because they don't think, it's not like they're thinking that, oh my god, I can never eat any animal products again. They can still eat sometimes, occasionally, if they want to, on occasion, as long as they are largely compliant. People can still eat some animal products on a whole foods plant based diet. But many people, when they've eaten this way for a long time, they actually turn vegan because then they realize, they discover how diverse plant based foods can be, and they eat a lot more foods than they had ever eaten before when they ate everything, because their palates improve. They get to test out, they try out so many new things that they really like it, and then they decide that I'm going to turn completely vegan because really they feel that a plant-based diet, a whole foods plant-based diet, gives them everything they need. So they don't need to eat animal products anymore. But that's up to
mm,
the individual. If they choose to, it's up to them entirely. But a whole foods plant-based diet primarily is about eating whole or minimally processed plant foods. So a
mm,
vegan diet, somebody who's a vegan may still eat junk food, as long as it doesn't have any animal source products. They can eat a lot of high
right,
fat food like potato chips, right? This is
right,
still a plant based product, but it's not a whole foods plant based because it's ultimately a
right.
junk food. Yeah, so that's the main difference.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting because I wouldn't have like kind of
yeah,
put that, I wouldn't have had that connection. I would either
yeah,
say that you're either vegetarian or vegan. I wouldn't have
yeah,
said like plant based. Do you know
yeah,
that eating was, just a separate entity in itself? So that makes
yeah,
sense. That's
yeah,
amazing. That makes sense because
yeah,
actually it doesn't put the pressure on people, like you say, to think
yeah,
I'm vegan and I've got to
yeah,
solely stick to
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So if I want to
yeah,
steak on the odd time, which probably you won't after you've gone on to the vegan,
yeah,
because
yeah,
like you say, like I've just been doing that this week.
Mhm.
right, doing more plant-based
Yeah.
and just watching loads of different things about it. And that's
Mhm.
because I've just had a, like, basically nearly finished a whole week of really hardcore antibiotics.
Oh, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So you,
basically, in
you've got
terms
to
of
improve your, yeah, you're
improve
building
my
up your, yep.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. So
Mm.
healing my gut, healing everything else, and also getting the
Yep.
toxins out that have. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting because I was thinking to myself,
Mm.
oh, maybe seeing as I've been, even though it's only been 2 days, it's been quite
Mm.
interesting. It is a lot of cooking, I found.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then
Initially, yeah.
I tend to, yeah, initially, because obviously you're making all these things and then you're trying things
Yeah.
out. Do you know what I mean? And you're
Yeah.
going, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Mhm.
And just making sure that you're not getting things with too many ingredients.
Right. Yeah. 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 I know. It takes some getting used to initially for sure. Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Hmm.
Okay, so you say the benefits outweighs, the benefits of plant-based outweighs,
Hmm.
low carb or animal based in terms of, diabetes recovery, right? So
Yes. So
if
as long as it's a, yeah, as long as people are sticking to whole foods, if they were to eat refined flours, refined sugar, a lot of oil, then
mm,
it, even though it's still plant based, that will not help their diabetes. So people have to be very intentional and very mindful that the foods that they're choosing should be as close to the whole form as possible. So brown rice instead of white rice, and fruits, actual whole fruits instead of juices or smoothies and stuff like that. So yeah, yeah. When the right foods are chosen, absolutely the benefits far outweigh the minor initial uh, spike in blood sugar level that they might see, because if it depends on how they've been eating so far, it depends on the individual
mm,
level.
mm,
Some people, if they've been diabetic for a long time, it's obviously going to take a little bit longer for them to see good results.
mm,
But same with somebody who might have been on a ketogenic diet, because they've really loaded up a lot on the fats and stuff, and their body, people who've been on a ketogenic diet, their body is no longer used to metabolizing carbohydrates at all. So if
mm,
they were to start eating this way, they're going to see a big spike initially. But again,
mm.
it's completely temporary, and that's going to gradually start going down. It's like actually fixing a hole in the shoe. Whereas in for a low carb diet, the focus would be just on removing the pebbles from the
Yeah,
street, but a whole foods plant based diet would actually work on improving the hole, in repairing the hole, so that the shoe lasts longer. So that's what a whole foods plant based diet actually is, versus a low carbohydrate diet. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, brilliant. So why the all? Why admit all?
Yeah, because a low carb diet would just, it's just focusing on, immediately you see that your blood sugar goes down because you're avoiding all carbohydrates, but that's
Mm,
really not working on the root cause of insulin resistance.
yeah.
So what happens is, with insulin resistance, and this is something that was uh, described as early as 1950s, but for some reason it never became mainstream. I don't know why, but now research is still showing that a high fat diet actually accumulates into the cells, surface of the cells, preventing the receptors, insulin receptors, from attaching to insulin. So it's like if you go on vacation and you lock your door, and while
Mm,
you're away, a prankster or a teenager comes across and jams some gum into the lock. So on
mm,
your return, you try to put the key into the lock, insert the key into the lock, and you find that the key doesn't work. There's
mm,
nothing wrong with the key, but the lock has gum jammed into it,
yeah.
right? So this is why it's not working. So same way, when there is a lot of fat in the diet, high dietary fat actually accumulates onto the cells, and it makes the receptors no longer attach properly. to insulin. And when that happens, blood sugar goes up because now the sugar has no way to enter the cells because insulin it's not working properly. So while there's a lot of insulin in the body, it's not still working properly. And a whole foods plant-based diet actually tries to clean out this gum from the log. It actually tries to take away the fat that is accumulated on the cells because of the immense amount of fiber. It's actually sweeping all of that. It's actually cleaning all of that away so that the body now recognizes insulin properly, and then blood sugar starts coming down on its own instead of avoiding sugar completely. Like sugar, yes, but all carbohydrates also break down into sugar eventually.
Yes, of course.
But then even then there's still so much difference between all the carbohydrates. Obviously you will not be eating, you shouldn't be eating refined sugar, but as I mentioned, fruits also have sugar. Oatmeal has sugar. All carbohydrates, the high quality ones, also break down into sugar, but that doesn't mean you should avoid them because that's not what caused type 2 diabetes in the first place. So, yeah. And another interesting point here, which a lot of people are not really aware of, people tend to think that it's just the carbohydrates that are bad and that should be avoided in case of type 2 diabetes. But I'm going to ask a question to anyone listening. Name some junk food, any junk food, right? And let's say cakes, pastries, pizza, potato chips. These are all junk food, right? But what's the ingredient in them that's making them a junk food? Cakes, pastries, cookies, they obviously have refined sugar, refined flour in them, right? Pizza, refined flour base. But it's not just the carbohydrates. There's also another ingredient which is often overlooked, and that's the high amount of fat in them, refined fat in them, right? There's trans fat, there's saturated fat in them. That fat also accumulates in the cells. But when people think of junk food, they're just thinking of carbohydrates. But it's not just carbohydrates that makes a food junk food. It's also the bad fat in them. So a whole food plant-based diet will actually eliminate all of these problem ingredients. And this is why it is so effective in clearing out the insulin, the clogged gum in that in the lock analogy. This kind of diet, a whole foods plant-based diet, cleans out all the accumulated fat, which is preventing insulin from working properly. And that's how type 2 diabetes improves from behind the scenes. So this works behind the scenes to clean out insulin resistance. That's how it works. So yes, initially, because this is something that works behind the scenes, initially, obviously, people will see some spikes and ups and downs in their blood sugar levels. But that's not something they should worry about as long as they are seeing a proper, and they are eating the right kind of food. Not just plant-based, not just looking at, vegan recipes. Many people do that when they hear that a plant-based diet is good for type 2 diabetes. Because they don't know the full ins and outs, they might go ahead and look at some vegan recipes online and stuff like that. But then that will not work, because if that recipe comes with a lot of refined stuff, if it comes with a lot of, oil and fat and other stuff, a lot of the vegan diet recipes also include so much of nut butters and stuff. There's cashew, there's everything and all that. So it's not going to work, unfortunately, unless they actually eliminate all of these problem ingredients. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if someone's to follow this type of program, whole based plant-based food, what results will they see, and how soon would they see that?
So this is actually, it depends on the individual level. So if someone is pre-diabetic, they can start seeing results. If they are compliant, they can start seeing results as early as 4 weeks. So, a pre-diabetic is not a complete diabetic yet. So they will see results much faster than someone, say, who's been diabetic for a long time. So for someone who's been diabetic for a long time, it'll take a little bit longer because there's been years of accumulated stuff to prevent insulin from working properly. But even then, it's going to work. It's going to work within 3 months, I would say, for other people. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing, because insulin resistance is also associated with so many other chronic conditions. People with even high blood pressure, people with high blood cholesterol, heart problems, even some forms of cancer, people with hormone problems also,
Yeah.
young women, if they have a lot of PMS symptoms and stuff like
Mm,
that. All of
mm,
this can improve with this
mm.
kind of diet. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the cool thing.
So, what advice would you give someone who was wanting to start to, in this way?
I would say do it. Don't get swayed by the low carb people telling you to avoid all carbohydrates, because really all carbohydrates are not bad. Just avoid refined carbohydrates. Avoid the refined carbohydrates. But if they are interested in following a whole foods plant-based diet, absolutely do not look at just vegan recipes online, because that's not going to help. So find someone, find a proper plan, because it will differ depending on their unique situation. Everybody is different. So really having someone to guide would be great, because a lot of people, when they hear, as I mentioned, about a plant-based diet helping, they try to do it on their own, and then unfortunately it can do more harm than good, because
Mm,
they're not looking at exactly what all to avoid. So to avoid that, to get the best results, do research. It's available online, a lot of research. But if you want to like make it smoother process, like really know what to follow, what not to, then find someone who can help you with that, really. Yeah.
brilliant. Thank you, Meghna. It's been really, really interesting. It's been
Thank you
great
for
to have
having
you on.
me.
No,
Yeah,
it's
thanks for
yeah.
having me.
So, can you just let people know where you are, and where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So online, you can find me on my Instagram. It's my kind of nutrition. That's my Instagram handle. And
Mm,
I also have a smallish Facebook group for type 2 diabetes. It's called Plant Based Nutrition for Type 2 Diabetes.
brilliant. That's great. So,
Yeah.
Meghna, what would you tell a younger you about plant-based diets?
So a younger me, I used to, weight loss is huge for everybody, and I was no different. So
Mm.
I used to go hopping from one diet to another, swayed by this, that, the fad diets. And there was a time I thought uh, Special K, Kellogg's would also help me lose weight, all sorts of things. And I know, I know it might be the same for a lot of people, but I would just say, don't look at all that. Don't listen to, media doesn't help, really,
Yeah.
honestly. But which is why people are so confused. But I would say trust your gut, because really anybody who asks you to avoid fruits, right, and whole grains and stuff like that, it cannot be right. So trust your gut, trust your intuition, do more research if you're into that sort of thing, but don't let a fad diet screw up your weight loss or whatever goals you want to do, right? Your health goals, because unfortunately, what is mainstream, what's more popular, keto diet is so popular, and I'm pretty sure if I was younger, I would have at least looked at it a couple of times. And even when I was trying to lose weight, a keto diet wasn't as popular, thankfully.
Yeah.
But it suddenly became so popular, and it suddenly became so mainstream that everyone is thinking about it. So that's what I would say. Just don't don't get swayed by that. Just because something is popular doesn't make it right.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank
Yeah.
you, Meghna. It's been great having you on. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
It's
much.
been amazing.
Thanks a lot.
So,
Thanks.
that's all right. So, everyone, it's the end of Wellness Wednesday today. If you want to get in touch with Meghna, she said where you can find her. So make sure that if you didn't hear it, just rewind, because this will be up in the group, in the guides in the end. Yeah. So you can always go back and check it and be able to talk to her. So, Jackie Grant,
Yeah.
granting you better health and fit